Throughout the annals of ancient Roman history, the names of emperors such as Augustus, Nero, and Caligula resonated for centuries, their deeds, both brilliant and monstrous, etched into the memory of generations. Their triumphant conquests, excessive indulgences, and at times insane antics shaped an entire era. However, behind the scenes of these celebrated men's power were figures no less significant, whose stories were overshadowed or deliberately downplayed by official chroniclers. One such prominent individual, perhaps the most influential of all, was Livia Drusilla, wife of the first Roman Emperor Octavian Augustus and mother of the second, Tiberius. She was not merely Rome's first empress, content with the role of a ruler's consort. Livia Drusilla proved herself an astute strategist, a devoted mother, a wise counselor, and a far-sighted matriarch of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. Some historians attribute to her the reputation of a ruthless manipulator, prepared to do anything to achieve her aims. Livia Drusilla was, without doubt, a woman who skillfully managed political processes from behind the throne, an empress whose decisions and intrigues profoundly influenced the fate of the most powerful empire of her time. Livia Drusilla was born on 30th January 59th BC into a family belonging to the Roman Republican elite. Her lineage was marked by nobility and influence. Her father, Marcus Livius Drusus Claudianus, was a respected senator, part of an ancient and influential branch of the Livian family, which had played a significant role in Roman political life for centuries. Her mother, Aufidia, also came from a wealthy and distinguished family. Livia's family was a microcosm of Roman political life, where intrigue and power ambitions lurked around every corner. Her childhood was spent not merely within the luxurious walls of her home, but at the very heart of the events shaping the Roman Republic's destiny. The Eternal City, as she knew it, buzzed with energy, magnificent temples, bustling forums rife with gossip, and a Senate torn by contradictions between proponents of the old order and those who saw in Julius Caesar the harbinger of a new era. In this atmosphere, the young Livia learned the art of silent observation, the ability to read between the lines and to understand that Rome's seeming stability was merely a fragile illusion. From an early age, she was surrounded by privilege, yet simultaneously felt a constant sense of uncertainty. Her days were filled with activities typical for noble Roman women: needlework, studying rhetoric, and religious rites, as well as an awareness of the growing tension in a country teetering on the brink of collapse. She was distinguished by her keen observation and reserve, as if sensing that one day she would be called upon to make decisions capable of altering the course of history. At the age of 16, Livia married her cousin, Tiberius Claudius Nero, a politician considerably older than her and belonging to conservative Republican circles. This marriage, as was customary among the Roman aristocracy, was dictated not by affection but by strategic considerations, strengthening political alliances, ensuring protection, and preserving family influence. For Livia, this union marked her first step into a life where personal interests and political ambitions were inextricably linked. Livia Drusilla and Tiberius Claudius Nero were bound by marriage, but soon political storms shook Roman society. In 44 BC, the assassination of Julius Caesar on the Ides of March became a pivotal moment, splitting the Roman Republic into two warring factions. On one side were Caesar's assassins, led by Brutus and Cassius; on the other, proponents of a new order led by Mark Antony and Octavian, Caesar's adopted son. Pregnant with her first child, Livia found herself at the epicenter of civil war, where family ties clashed with the harsh reality of political strife. Her husband, Tiberius Claudius Nero, sided with the Republicans, supporting the doomed cause of Caesar's assassins. Following the conspirators' defeat at the Battle of Philippi, Livia's family faced persecution from the victors, Mark Antony and Octavian. Livia's father took his own life, and she, with her newborn son in her arms, was forced to flee Rome. Together with her husband and the infant Tiberius, the future emperor, she went into exile in Greece. Away from Rome, amidst political instability, Livia realized that survival in a male-dominated world required a particular art. Security proved illusory and loyalty fickle. It was during these years of exile that her character was forged, subsequently enabling her to become one of the most influential women of the Roman Empire. In 39 BC, after long years of wandering and uncertainty, Livia made a triumphant return to Rome, like a heroine completing a perilous journey. A fragile truce between Octavian and Mark Antony offered faint hope for the establishment of long-awaited stability in a republic ravaged by civil wars. However, what awaited Livia in the capital was not merely a chance to return to her former life, but the dawn of a new chapter that would forever alter the course of Roman history, like a mighty river forging a new channel. Soon after their return, Livia and her husband were invited to an audience with Octavian himself. It was there that an event occurred, comparable to a flash of lightning illuminating a dark sky. The future emperor was instantly and irrevocably captivated by her charm. This was not merely a fleeting physical attraction, though Livia was renowned for her exquisite beauty and aristocratic bearing. It was a genuine, all-consuming fascination, like a spark igniting between two magnets. Octavian, an ambitious young politician striving for sole power over Rome, saw in Livia not only an attractive woman, but also a personality endowed with an unyielding will, a sharp intellect, and high moral principles. Fate seemed to have brought them together to become the architects of a new era. However, there was one significant obstacle. Both were married. Livia was expecting a child with her husband, and Octavian was married to a woman who was also carrying his child. But, as subsequent events would show, these circumstances meant nothing in the face of burgeoning passion and political ambition. Soon, one of the era's most notorious scandals erupted, causing a considerable stir in Roman society. Tiberius Claudius Nero, Livia's husband, unexpectedly and publicly announced their divorce, offering no coherent explanation. One can only speculate whether this decision was made of his own volition or under pressure from the all-powerful Octavian. But one thing is certain, in those times, no one dared openly defy the will of the great Caesar's heir, whose shadow loomed powerfully over Rome. Soon after these events, something extraordinary occurred. Barely having given birth to her second child, Livia married Octavian. Remarkably, her former husband, the very man who had been cast aside, personally gave her away at the wedding ceremony. This episode, more akin to a dramatic staging than a political chronicle, marked the beginning of one of the most enduring and influential unions in the history of the Roman Empire. The relationship between Octavian and Livia was not merely a love affair, but a partnership founded on equality. He recognized in her not only an attractive woman, but also a discerning, wise counselor, capable of navigating complex intrigues and maintaining composure in turbulent situations. She, in turn, skillfully navigated the dangers lurking within the palace, remaining by his side, neither overshadowing him nor remaining in his shadow. Thus, Livia Drusilla gradually transformed into an inconspicuous yet dependable pillar for the most powerful man in Rome, and the most significant, perhaps even the most perilous, was yet to come. In 27 BC, when Octavian officially adopted the title of Augustus, Rome abandoned its republican governance and became an empire. With this, Livia ceased to be merely his wife and became the first Roman empress, despite having no precedent or official title for the role. There was no grand ceremony, no coronation, no legal recognition of her position, yet everyone knew who she truly was. Unlike most aristocrats of that era, Livia was not confined to the role of a housewife, nor did she serve as a mere ornament of power. Thanks to her sharp intellect, judiciousness, and unyielding will, she attained an exceptional position, becoming Augustus's most trusted confidant. In a raging sea of conspiracies, betrayals, and senators poised to stab him in the back, Livia proved to be the emperor's sole political and emotional anchor. History has preserved no records of her public speeches or legislative initiatives, yet her influence was constant. Before making any significant decision, Augustus invariably sought her counsel in private. He shared with her his thoughts, suspicions, plans for alliances, and anxieties. Thus, Livia became the empire's unseen strategist. While men engaged in fierce debates in the Senate, she expertly wove webs of power within the palace walls. She was spoken of as the only man in Augustus's court who did not wear a toga. Her role was not only intimate, but also symbolic. Always dressed in modest attire and devoid of ornamentation, Livia presented herself to the public as the embodiment of the ideal Roman matron, modest, disciplined, and prudent. While many women of high society became embroiled in scandalous affairs and indulged in excesses, Livia stood as a symbol of virtue, order, and balance. However, behind this reserved and controlled exterior lay a strategic mind and a determined character, prepared to do anything to secure the succession of the throne for her lineage. Thus, while Augustus fortified the empire on the external front, Livia strengthened her dynasty at the very heart of power. Upon marrying Emperor Augustus, Livia shifted the focus of her ambitions from personal aspirations to ensuring the prosperity of her dynasty. Unable to bear Augustus' heirs, she turned her attention to her children from her previous marriage, particularly Tiberius, seeing in him the pivotal figure for her dynastic strategy. Tiberius, however, being a complex personality and distant from political intrigues, showed no desire for power. An introvert by nature, he preferred solitude and felt uncomfortable at the center of public attention, dreaming of a life far removed from senatorial debates and palace conspiracies. But Livia had her own plans, distinct from his. Realizing she could not consolidate her influence through a direct descendant of Augustus, Livia resolved to prepare Tiberius for the role of legitimate heir. To this end, she began methodically dismantling the ties that bound him to his private life. The first casualty of her intrigues was Tiberius's happy marriage to Vipsania Agrippina, a union founded on mutual love and far removed from political calculations, and in which a child was expected. Livia, exerting pressure and skillfully manipulating, used her connections at court and her influence over Augustus to force Tiberius to dissolve this marriage. Furthermore, she insisted on his marriage to Julia, Augustus's own daughter, a woman known for her scandalous conduct and utterly unsuited to Tiberius's character. A series of bitter experiences followed. Tiberius, despite his devotion to duty, could never erase the memory of his mother's betrayal. His life with Julia became an endless string of misfortunes, discord, infidelities, emotional desolation. He endured the loss of a newborn son, and when the burden became unbearable, he decided to flee. He voluntarily went into exile on the island of Rhodes, seeking refuge from power, his mother, the empire, and perhaps from himself. While Tiberius was in voluntary exile on Rhodes, consumed by disappointment and resentment, Livia found solace and new hopes in her other son, Drusus. Unlike his elder brother, Drusus was charismatic, courageous, and ambitious. He possessed an inner fire capable of transforming ordinary men into legendary heroes. His military career was impeccable, and his rapid advancement made him a respected figure both in the army and among the populace. Livia, possessing a gift for unfailingly assessing people's potential, saw in him the opportunity to establish a new dynasty. Augustus, too, held him in admiration and openly showed his favor, thereby fostering the hope that Drusus could become the next emperor, or, at the very least, the architect of a new generation of Roman leaders. However, as often happens, fate had other plans. In 9 BC, during a military expedition into Germanic lands, Drusus tragically fell from his horse, sustaining severe internal injuries. Despite all efforts by physicians, the general died far from his native Rome, in the misty lands by the Rhine. This news plunged Livia into the deepest despair. Her beloved son, the young man who seemed capable of compensating for her disappointments concerning Tiberius and strengthening the empire's grandeur, had passed away. Her grief was immeasurable, personal, and inexpressible. For the first time in many years, the all-powerful woman of Rome felt herself, above all, a mother crushed by sorrow. Drusus's body was returned to Rome with military honors. His remains, accompanied by legions, were carried along the Appian Way, a symbol of both his glory and an irreplaceable loss. The people mourned their hero. Augustus extolled him as the son he had always dreamed of. Livia, through her tears, reaffirmed her resolve. If Tiberius was her only hope, she would do everything possible to bring him to power, even if it meant personally, using all her authority and influence, guiding his destiny. After decades of rule, reforms, military campaigns, and strengthening the empire, Augustus's physical health began to decline. In his final years, he preferred to speak little, often secluded himself, and communicated with the outside world primarily through letters, almost always addressed to Livia. The couple, who for half a century had shaped Rome's destiny, spent their final days in silent accord, like allies who had ruled the world together. When death finally knocked on the emperor's door in 14 AD, Livia was by his side not as an empress or a political symbol, but as a faithful life companion. She cared for him, supported him, and was the sole witness to his last words. According to some accounts, It was she who decided to postpone the official announcement of Augustus's demise until Tiberius could arrive in Rome from the island of Rhodes and seamlessly assume the reins of the empire. A pivotal moment in history had arrived. Tiberius, burdened by his past, had no desire whatsoever to ascend the throne. His soul was wounded not only by resentment over the destiny orchestrated by his power-hungry mother, the separation from his beloved wife, the marriage of convenience to Julia, the incessant pressure, but also by profound sadness that he had never been allowed to determine his own path in life. An atmosphere of tension and coldness permeated his relationship with Livia, laced with unspoken reproaches and unhealed wounds. Yet Rome desperately needed a ruler. Senators expressed their support, and the people looked upon him with hope. Livia, like an experienced strategist, had already positioned the pieces on the political chessboard to ensure her son's legitimate right to Augustus's legacy. And so, under the weight of institutional power and the ominous shadow of his all-powerful mother, Tiberius conceded. With a heavy heart, he nonetheless gave his assent. Livia, meanwhile, emerged from mourning, endowed with even greater power than before. Thanks to Augustus's will, she was officially adopted into the imperial family under the name Julia Augusta, definitively cementing her position as mother of the empire. From that moment, she was remembered by posterity not only as the wife of the first emperor, but also as the mother of the second. But despite this, the tension in her relationship with Tiberius continued to escalate steadily, foreshadowing new conflicts and intrigues in the struggle for power. Augustus's demise plunged Rome into deep mourning, yet simultaneously sparked a wave of unsettling rumors that agitated the minds of senators, the upper echelons of society, and chroniclers of the era. Was Livia's sinister role discernible in this sorrowful event? After all, the final years of Augustus's reign had been marred by a series of mysterious deaths among potential heirs to the throne. Gaius and Lucius Caesar, the emperor's grandsons who were earmarked as successors, died young and under very strange circumstances. Soon after Augustus's death, Agrippa Posthumus, Julia's youngest son, was also eliminated. For many, these events appeared not as a coincidental series of circumstances, but as a meticulously planned operation to remove rivals, orchestrated by Livia, who aimed to clear the path to power for her son Tiberius. Poets such as Ovid and historians including Tacitus, Dio Cassius, and Suetonius in their works, with varying degrees of aversion to imperial power, hinted at Livia's possible involvement in her husband's poisoning. According to their testimonies, she skillfully manipulated the timing of Augustus's death, delaying the official announcement while simultaneously dispatching a messenger to Rhodes, where Tiberius was, to ensure his arrival in the Senate before other contenders. Versions proliferated like mushrooms after rain, seeping into every corner of the palace. Some claimed that Livia used poisoned figs, others that Augustus died of old age, and that a shrewd and powerful woman, which Livia was, merely cleverly exploited the situation to her advantage without necessarily being the cause of the emperor's ailment. Over time, the image of Livia as a cunning manipulator and a calculating individual, prepared to do anything for the prosperity of her dynasty, became firmly entrenched in the public consciousness. Henceforth, she was perceived not merely as a devoted wife or a wise counselor, but as an independent political figure, striving for power and stopping at nothing to achieve her ambitious goals. In Rome, where political intrigue was commonplace, such behavior caused little surprise, but for a woman, such single-mindedness seemed almost unforgivable audacity. Since then, public opinion of Livia has constantly wavered between admiration for her devotion and suspicion of treacherous designs. Was she a modest heroine of the empire, or a cold-blooded Machiavellian weaving intrigues from the shadows? Although Livia ultimately achieved her cherished goal, Tiberius's ascension to the imperial throne, their relationship was irrevocably damaged. Long before Augustus's death, a deep chasm had opened between mother and son. Livia, driven by insatiable ambition, strenuously steered Tiberius towards the pinnacles of power, exerting pressure, resorting to manipulation, and demanding personal sacrifices that he could never forgive her for. She forced him to break off his marriage to the woman he loved, burdened him with a public life he never sought, and ultimately elevated him to the apex of power in Rome, a position Tiberius secretly despised. Following Augustus's death, the Roman Senate sought to bestow countless honors upon Livia Drusilla, including the erection of monuments in her honor, the granting of honorary titles, and direct influence over the state's political life. However, the new emperor, Tiberius Claudius Nero, systematically resisted these initiatives. He rejected most of the proposed posthumous honors, limited her involvement in state affairs, and gradually removed her from key governmental decision-making. Despite this, Livia was not prepared to relinquish her position without a struggle. Having received the official title of Julia Augusta, she continued to maintain her own court, exerting influence over senators and prominent figures, and openly intervened in the affairs of the accused and condemned, defending their interests. Such constant interference, often direct and uncompromising, undermined Tiberius's authority, who increasingly viewed her not as a mother, but as a political rival seeking to curb his power. One of the most intense points of their conflict was the Senate's proposal to officially name Tiberius not only the son of Augustus, but also the son of Livia, which symbolically equated the mother's role with that of the empire's founder. This move was a blow to Tiberius's pride, but also a clear indication of the powerful shadow Livia continued to cast over the Roman political scene. Ultimately, the distance between mother and son became insurmountable. Tiberius voluntarily went into exile on the island of Capri and completely ceased communication with his mother. Even when she fell seriously ill years later, the emperor did not deem it necessary to visit her, demonstrating their final estrangement. In 29 A.D., Livia passed away in estrangement, receiving neither reconciliation nor comfort from her son, Emperor Tiberius, who showed disrespect by refusing to arrange a fitting funeral, despite the Senate's earnest pleas. Following the death of Livia Drusilla, known as Julia Augusta, her name was consigned to official oblivion by her own son's decree. Tiberius, consumed by long-standing grievances, vetoed all posthumous honors the Senate intended to bestow upon her. He categorically rejected her deification, forbade her apotheosis, and did not even deem it necessary to attend the funeral ceremony. Instead, the eulogy was delivered by Caligula, his successor. However, fate held an unexpected twist in her posthumous story. Years later, her grandson Claudius, the very man whom Livia had once despised, humiliated, and sought to keep in the shadows due to his physical infirmities, ascended to the imperial throne. Against all expectations, it was Claudius who undertook the mission of publicly restoring his grandmother's good name. He ordered her official deification, bestowed upon her the title of Diva Augusta, and commanded the erection of statues, temples, and altars in her honor. During public games, her effigy was carried alongside that of Augustus, as if time had decided to rewrite history. Many Roman women became priestesses worshiping her spirit, and her spiritual influence spread throughout the empire, long outliving her earthly existence. Livia Drusilla entered history not merely as Rome's first empress, but as the political progenitor of an entire dynasty. It was thanks to her strategic intrigues and relentless pursuit of power that her family held the reins of government for decades. Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and Nero, each of whom left an indelible mark on the empire's history, were direct or indirect results of her ambitions and carefully planned family alliances. This remarkable woman became the embodiment of female power, sharp strategic intellect, and the ability to skillfully influence political processes while remaining within the shadows of a patriarchal society. For centuries, her life has served as an inspiration for writers, directors, and screenwriters, leading to renowned works such as I, Claudius, and Domina. In these narratives, her image is always shrouded in an aura of duality, simultaneously evoking admiration and suspicion. Undoubtedly, Livia was a woman far ahead of her time. She presented herself publicly as a strict and virtuous matron, yet in private affairs she displayed ruthlessness and resolve. Her influence permeated the very foundations of the Roman Empire, making her a perpetually present figure in history. Livia Drusilla was not merely the first empress, she was a quiet yet powerful architect of a legacy that shaped the empire's destiny for over half a century. Her name may have remained in the shadow of ruling men, but it continues to shine through the ages as a symbol of a legendary, complex, and captivating personality.